Hello, today we're speaking with Patrick von Sychowski from UK. And Patrick said that he runs a video on demand service that launched in 195 countries. It's unique in many ways. And today I would like to find out and to know more about Patrick, his expertise and his amazing experience in video on demand and all the related topics. So Patrick, hello.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me to speak.
Thank you for coming. And could you please tell me about your experience, what you are doing in the video industry?
Sure. So a little over a year ago, we launched our subscription video on demand service called Cultpix. And Cultpix specializes in classic and vintage genre films and cult films. So that could be anything from kung fu films, spaghetti westerns, horror films, science fiction, nudie cuties, you name it. We have to date over 800 films that have been uploaded on the site. We had about 5 or 10 every week. And like you correctly said, when we launched, we were global in day one. That was always our ambition, and we are available in about 195 countries today. So I think pretty much everywhere in the world, apart from North Korea and maybe Syria. So anywhere where people like these kind of quirky, odd, different old films, they can watch Cultpix today.
But how did people know about you in 195 countries?
Well, not enough people know about it yet. So that's what we're trying to spread the word about it. And we do it through a number of ways. So we're obviously active on social media. We're on the usual ones, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We haven't yet done anything on TikTok, and we should probably do that because it's a very visual medium and it lends itself nicely to those kind of videos. But we've also found old school ways work very well in terms of getting people involved. Primarily, we have a weekly email newsletter that goes out to many more people than our members on the service. And we have a podcast where we've put out over 50 episodes called Cultpix Radio in 1 year. And what's amazing is people write to us and said, I listened to about a dozen of your podcasts, and then I decided to become a member, to which I think either we're not doing it well enough that we thought that people would be members and then listen to the podcast, kind of make it sticky, but it's working the other way around. People are listening to the podcast for the sake of the podcast and then deciding they want to become members to the platform. So it's taken on a bit of a life of its own, but it's a great way of connecting and engaging with people. And that's really what it's about. We don't want to preach to them or recruit them. We want to create a global community for the kind of people who love these kind of unusual films.
And from which year to which year these films are?
So we're quite specific. So the earliest films are old silent films. They could be from 1915 or even older. We have some vintage naughty French films. This is what your great-great-grandparents probably watched up until around 1991. That's the kind of cutoff date for the films. But we have more recent films if, for example, they are documentaries about old films. So we have a great Italian documentary about a famous film called Cannibal Holocaust. So the kind of films that help you get more of an appreciation of old cult and classic films.
And on which TV platform do you use? Do I understand correct that you are an owner of paid TV platform because your customers, they pay you for the access?
Yes, that's correct. So we have a subscription video on demand platform. It's web-based, and you can become a member one of two ways. You can pay a monthly fee, which is $6.66, or if you're truly fanatic, if you're really into these films, you can sign up for a whole year for $59, and that's a saving of about $20 on doing it by the month instead. So we're available on web platform, and you can obviously mirror cast it to your television. But we've recently also had a soft launch on Roku platform.
Yeah.
And this is what was asked for by more than anything else by members and people who wrote to us and said, when you launch on Roku, that's the day I'm going to sign up to the platform. I want to watch it that way. So we've had a soft launch. We haven't announced it yet. In fact, you're the first one to hear about this. So we've got about 60 titles on Roku right now. So we're testing it, making sure that everything is working. And when that's launched, or when that's something we're happy with and it's working, then we're going to put more films on there and we're going to make a big announcement. And this is kind of how we launched the website itself. So for the first 2 months of the launch, it was by invitation only. So it wasn't that anybody could subscribe. They needed to have an invite, and they could only sign up for a year. But we gave people a discount because we knew that there were going to be technical problems. We knew that there were things that weren't going to be working. We needed that kind of feedback. And to do that, we needed to recruit the kind of the most fanatic, the most passionate film lovers who would forgive us for the occasional, teething problem in terms of launching it. And we got a tremendous response from that. And after about 2 months, we figured that, yep, it's working well enough. Let's throw open the gates to everybody who wants to be part of it. And it's been working pretty well ever since. We have small issues all the time. We are our own tech support. We have a great development team. Remote ones. We've never actually met them, but they do a brilliant job and they're very responsive. So one of the key things, because we don't have a technology background, this platform is completely self-financed. We bootstrapped it. We had a bit of a windfall because, just to give you a background, so we come from a background of film distribution. So we've been running a film distribution company in Sweden for it's actually 20 years this year, where we published films that we acquired the rights to on first VHS. That's how long ago it was, so these things. Then on DVD, then on Blu-ray, but the world was going in the direction of streaming. So we knew we had to be on streaming. And the kind of films that we like are the kind of films you wouldn't find on Netflix or Amazon. There are special niche operators like Mubi for art house and Shudder for horror, but there isn't anything for all kind of cult and genre films. So we thought, well, if nobody else is going to do it, we'll have to do it, just so we can have a platform where we can watch the kind of films that we are into.
But where exactly do you find these films, and do you pay for rights, or how does it work?
Good question. So when we started out, we ourselves have a library of about 80 or 90 films that we own the rights to globally in perpetuity on all platforms. So we took those, and also we've been working for a long time with other distribution companies, and we had very good relationships with them because they've distributed our films, our Swedish films, in other markets. And we've done work with them in our own territories. So great companies like Something Weird Video in the United States, or Vinegar Syndrome, Eurocine in Europe. We had Nikatsu in Japan, Penny Video in Italy. All these companies who have films that are similar to the kind that we want. And what we typically do, because like I said, we're bootstrapped, we're self-financed, we can't splash out and spend huge sums on acquiring the rights. So we tend to avoid what's known as minimum guarantee, MG. This is where you pay the rights owner a fixed sum for the right to show their film. So let's say, you have several thousand. And what we do instead is we do a revenue share, which means that typically a film rights owner will get 25% or 25 cents on every euro that we earn. So from the first euro that people pay us, the rights holders are guaranteed a quarter of that. And we cover all of the costs of building the platform, maintaining it, the cloud storage, customer service, promotion, marketing, advertising, because it's very easy to do what's known as a profit share, where we say, right, well, we'll give you 50% of the profit at the end of the day, but I could pay myself a huge salary and make sure there was never any profit. So when you do a revenue share, that's a much more honest and transparent way of sharing the income. And they have full overview of how many members we have, how much they paid us, and also how many times people watched each of the films. So if you have a very popular film on our platform, then you get a bigger cut of that percentage to your film. But so far we have deals with about 24 different rights holders, and they're everybody from people like the ones I mentioned, to we work with a lot of film institutes. So we've got the Danish Film Institute, the Hungarian Film Institute, the Dovzhenko Center in Ukraine. All of these rights holders have some great titles that just aren't seen anywhere else. So we're super thrilled to be working with them and making these films available to the world.
And what are top 3 most popular films according to your statistics? I hope you have statistics.
It's fascinating to pull down the statistics, and we do it on a weekly basis where we get the top 10, and we obviously do it on a half-year basis for making the payments. It might not surprise you that a lot of the very popular films tend to be the films that have a bit of nudity in them. Some people's reason people like that, but we have a very mixed genre of different types of films.
For example,
so it's not just
Tinto Brass, something like Tinto Brass or not?
Yes, something like Tinto Brass. We've got obviously a lot of Swedish ones because Sweden became famous for that in the 60s and 70s, the whole Swedish sin. We're doing a series of German films at the moment. So if you go onto the website right now, you'd see that we have titles such as Freedom to Love, Freiheit für die Liebe, or another one is Sex Freedom in Germany, or How to Play a Seduction Game. But it's funny because some of the most popular ones aren't the ones you'd guess. So, for example, the most popular film in the first 6 months of this year was a thriller from Something Weird Video called Zero In and Scream, which is about a sniper shooting people in the Hollywood Hills in the late 60s, early 70s, inspired by true events. And about a quarter of the film is just the camera is the viewfinder of the rifle. And then a big part of the film takes place underwater in a swimming pool at a party. A very, very strange film, but for some reason people loved it, and it just kept coming back into the top 10. I don't know why. We don't use enough algorithms to analyze that. We don't push recommendations. What we try to do is we do curations and themes. So, for example, we'll have a theme week, and we'll do a podcast around it, newsletter, and we'll group films together. So, for example, the sexy German films at the moment.
And do you have any statistics about countries? For example, 50% in Europe, 20 in the United States, something like that.
Yes, we do. We've got people all over the world. So we have members we're truly a global cult. We've got members in Brazil, in Australia.
Main countries.
The biggest countries, the main markets are not surprisingly Scandinavian, which is our home market. United States and United Kingdom, and then we have in Northern Europe tends to be the other big ones, so Germany, Netherlands, those kind of countries. So it's very much driven by the content. Initially we had a lot of Swedish films. We do have a lot of Swedish films still on there. Not all of them we've been had time to subtitle yet because they're very small and obscure, so doing a proper subtitling would be very expensive, but we're getting around to it, and we're trying to widen it, but some countries are very difficult to negotiate the rights to films. So, for example, let's say we wanted to go for a Spanish horror film. When it was made in the 70s, there was likely to be financing from Italy, from Spain, from France, Germany. So the rights to the same film could belong to about 3 or 4 different companies, depending on which territories. So then the question is, do we just buy the rights to it for the Spanish market? Or do we try to negotiate and get 3 or 4 different rights holders on board? It's complicated. We're gradually resolving it, but it's not easy and straightforward. So as we have more of these local titles, I'm sure we're going to see more of members coming up in countries like Italy, Spain, and also having local language versions of the films. So these are things we're working on.
But yeah, I just wanted to ask if, let's say, an old film was done in native language and is not translated into English, what do you do in that case?
Mostly we only have foreign films if they're either subtitled or dubbed into English. Sometimes we have to source the subtitles from very strange places. So, for example, we had I won't mention, but we had a series of films from a major film institute, and they didn't provide us with subtitles. So we had to go online, and there are a lot of web forums where they have subtitles for even obscure films. But even then, it's not automatic that you'll just upload them and they work. You have to QC, you have to do quality control, and then you find out, no, these were subtitles that were taken from a DVD, so they're 25 frames per second instead of 24 frames per second, which means that after 10 minutes, it's completely out of sync with the dialogue, or it'll turn out that they've added a logo at the beginning, a 15-second logo at the beginning of the film, and suddenly all subtitles are 15 seconds off. So constant work, these are the little things you don't think about. So when you fire up Netflix or anybody else, you just assume that everything works. But when you run a subscription video on demand service yourself, you realize just how much effort it is to get everything right and to make sure that it is of the best possible quality, even for small and obscure films. They deserve it just as much.
And what about the age or age groups of your customers?
So we have a strict policy that you have to be 18 or older, or whatever the legal age is in your country, to watch adult films. What this means, for example, is that we have a small section of films you can watch for free, but they tend to be the more innocent films, so nothing too gruesome or too much nude. We don't accept prepaid credit cards or debit cards in terms of payments, because obviously sometimes children can be given those as gift cards. So we want to make sure that nobody who shouldn't be watching our films are watching the films. So you need to have your own credit or debit card to be able to do that. In terms of the demographic, it's an interesting split. We figured that it would mostly be people like myself, which is middle-aged, white men from a specific background, but we have a very wide audience. We have, I'd say between a quarter and a third, by my estimate, are probably female. We don't know exactly because we don't ask people to give up their gender when they register, but we can tell from the emails usually. There's also a lot of very, very young demographic is watching our films, people who weren't born when even the most recent films came out. And I think this has to do with that kind of nostalgia that you see for shows like Stranger Things. So, my nieces and nephews who weren't born then, they're obsessed with it. And I'm like, I can remember the 80s, so that's why I'm into it. But you've only ever seen on television and film, and yet, you're so into it. It's great. We love it, but we can't quite explain it.
And do people come to Cultpix to watch Terminator?
Do they come to watch
Terminator by Asians from 80s?
Yeah, that's a question we wrestle with. I love Terminator. It's a great film, and it's just been re-released actually, and Terminator 2. We don't tend to go for the bigger kind of blockbusters, even though they have a certain cult appeal, like Star Wars or Star Trek or Terminator, because we know that those kind of films you can usually find if you're looking for them on Amazon Prime or Netflix or one of these services. So we tend to go for the films that are a little bit harder to find. You might not know about them so well, which is why we try to do a lot of educating about them, which is why we talk about them on the podcast, so that even if it's by a director you've never heard about, obscure actors, whatever, you can still find a way of finding something that might be interesting for you. And so it's a kind of invitation in to this weird and wonderful world of wacky films that aren't your usual kind of streaming fare.
And do you have any technical solutions to improve the quality of the film? Because many old films, they have quite poor quality of the picture.
Yes. No, it's very true, because these films, they were shown in cinemas for a long time and basically thrown away. Nobody thought they would have any value after that. And back then there wasn't DVD or, let alone streaming or VHS even. So often we've had very, very difficulty finding old film prints that we can use. And we ourselves have been scanning a lot of these old films. We've worked together with people like the Swedish Film Institute, or in the US, for example, the American Genre Film Archive that does a lot of work with Alamo Drafthouse and Something Weird Video. So we try to find the best copy that we can find of a physical copy. Sometimes it's just a VHS copy. That is the only thing that has survived of a big film. One example is we have a horror film called Sleep of Death. And then the question is, do we put that out even though it's only VHS quality? but it's either that or people aren't able to watch it at all. So what we're doing now is we're going into and trying to look at solutions for using the latest type of machine learning and AI in terms of video enhancement and resolution. And there's some incredible work being done in terms of image processing that can improve even very low grade original material into much, much better. And this is part of what we're doing also with our sister company. So this summer at the Cannes Film Festival, we launched the European Genre Film Foundation, the EGFF. And what the European Genre Film Foundation will do is that it's going to work to restore and make available and increase the understanding of these type of films. And we're funding this partly ourselves. So the films that are on the site, which are public domain, which means the copyright has, for whatever reason, expired or doesn't apply anymore. So it means that we're showing the film, but nobody gets paid because there is no copyright on the film. So it can either be an incredibly old film, like Nosferatu, the German vampire film that's 100 years old, or something like Plan 9 from Outer Space, which the copyright notice wasn't renewed. So nobody owns the film as such, and anybody can show it. So the money we earn from that, we're giving that back into the industry so that we can save more films, do better quality versions of those films, and above all, work with a lot of other companies and institutions to create the best possible presentation in terms of image and also sound that's possible with the technology today. But it keeps improving. It's a very, very exciting field in terms of the whole video processing and image enhancement.
And what % of your customers stays with you from year to year? Or let's say they buy subscription, watch film 4 months, and then go.
That's an interesting question. First of all, it's difficult to compare because some people take out for a year, and we've only been going for just over a year, but we're seeing very, very high retention rates. I can't give a specific number, but I know what they are for Netflix. We are way above that. What we've also found very interesting is sometimes people come to us because they're just looking for one film. Maybe because they're writing their film thesis on this and they can't watch it anywhere else. So what they do is we found, and we didn't expect this, but our monthly membership fee at $6.66 is cheap enough for people to use it as a TVOD, transactional video on demand. So they will literally sign up for 1 month, probably just watch that one film so they can write about it in their thesis, and then they cancel their membership. But that's fine, as long as they were happy with that one film and they think they came to it. Then we're happy for them because we've done them a service. So, but in terms of the kind of month-on-month renewal rates and the churn rates and the annual one, I can't give you a specific number, but we're very happy with it, and we are indexing way above the industry average.
And how many years do you exist already?
So Cultpix launched in April of last year. So we're coming up to about 1.5 years now of operation. But like I said, the company behind it, we've been in the business of film distribution for over 20 years, or 20 years this year. So we have those relationships, we have those knowledges, those experiences of doing contracts and doing deals. And that's proved invaluable. You know, we didn't know all the technology, but we had a super talented technology team. We work with a Norwegian company called FilmGrail, and they have a partner in DevHouse Pro. And so they were able to take our specifications. And the beauty is that when you launch a streaming service today, I'm not saying it's simple enough to anybody to do it, but it's pretty simple. There are so many off-the-shelf components you can use to put it all together. So for example, we have a payment platform, we take Stripe. We want hosting, we need Cloudflare. If we need geo-blocking, we've got another one for that. If we need you know, a SMS verification code sent out, we've got Firebase. You know, we can use Twilio, all of these things. So it's just having a clever software people that you have a good communication with to explain what it is that you need, and they can communicate to you how long is it going to take, what are going to be the challenges, what do they need from you, and then you build it, and then you realize what isn't working and you work to improve that, and gradually you get to where you want to be.
And what are your plans for next 5 years? In terms of developing the platform?
For the next 5 years, we want to keep expanding. Nothing less than world domination will do for us. So to do that, we have to be available on more devices and more platforms. Ideally, we'd like to see Apple iOS and Android devices as well. Smart TV is a challenge, but we'll get there too. And above all, we want to be able to have more different types of films. We want to have more European films. We want to have more Asian films, more martial arts films, more Indian horror films, more spaghetti westerns from Italy, that kind of thing. And above all, we really genuinely, passionately believe in building a community. This isn't our platform. This is our members' world. And we want to help create and build it out so that people can engage, not just with the films, but with each other. So we're going to have meetups in real life. We have had already film screenings in cinemas, where people can get together and watch these things and meet some of their old favorite stars. So it's about creating a cult film universe, if you will.
And why smart TV is a challenge?
Well, because they tend to be more specific in terms of proprietary browsers. So the LG OS browser is different from the Samsung one, is different from the Sony TV one. So there's a lot of specification because of the hardware. They're not built on a strong platform like a laptop in terms of the processor. So they tend to be very much more stripped down browsers. And so if we're doing an in-browser experience, that's more difficult, but also making an app for Samsung and then for LG and then for Philips and then for Sony and then for whatever Chinese brand. It's not an effective use of our money. We have a limited amount of time and money, so we got to focus it where that makes the most sense. So right now, that's been to develop the Roku platform because that's what people have asked of us. And then we'll see in the future what it is that people request. It might be something that is only just starting to bubble up. So we're constantly evaluating what technologies are out there and how we can best bring that experience to as many people as possible for the best value.
And how many people are looking for new films, Asian films, some very not known films?
Good question. We don't know. We always joke that if we found 10 members in every country, then we would have a business, and we've done that already. We have a sustainable business. We have income. We're cash flow positive. We're not paying ourselves masses yet, but we're paying out money to our content partners, and we're showing some money left in the bank at the end of the week. So. And that's only tapping into a very, very small percentage. So, I know that Netflix just lost, 2 million people in the first quarter of this year. It was a big upset. I can't claim we took all of those 2 million, but our ambition is just to chip away a little bit, because in the future, everybody's still going to have access and still going to be subscribing to the big platforms. So chances are that you will have 2 to 3 subscriptions to whether it's Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Apple TV Plus. You'll have 2 or 3 of those. And then you'll have 1 or 2 of special interest niche channels. It can be the horror one like Shudder, or art house one like Mubi, or a cult film one like Cultpix. So that's where we're positioning ourselves. We want to be one of those 1 or 2 special focused add-on streaming services that you have in addition to the big ones. And look, we watch Netflix too. So, and sometimes we even find stuff we like there after we've scrolled through the menu for about half an hour. So it's a universe that's big enough for all of us.
Yeah, but inside your company, how many people are looking for new old films that can be added to your platform?
We're constantly doing that ourselves. So myself and my colleague and co-founder, Rickard, are the owners and the principal founders, but we're in constant dialogue with other partners, other colleagues' suggestions. So people we interview on the podcast. So for example, next week, we're going to have an interview with Dr. Adrian Smith, who's a British university professor and specializes in the whole scene of British classic cult and exploitation films. And they tip us up and we learn through them about, well, you should talk to such and such, and are you aware of this and that film? So we don't know everything, but we're learning from talking to people in all parts of the world. So we were talking to a woman lawyer in Paris who specializes in doing deals for behalf of Brazilian companies. And through her, we learned about the Easterns, which are Brazilian Westerns, but set in the northeast of the country, or Porno Chan-chan, which are Brazilian softcore films with a lot of bikinis in them. So things we had no idea about, but we learn from others. And then we're super thrilled to be able to introduce other people and our members to this world of films they might not have heard about, but chances are, they might love it.
How did you came to this idea with your partner to create this business, this project?
It was a COVID lockdown project. We both had day jobs that kind of went a bit quiet because of the pandemic and because of things. And at the same time, we had a bit of inflow of cash. So instead of paying ourselves, we decided, hey, now is the time to do that thing we've talked about for a long time, which is let's launch our own streaming service. And fortunately, we didn't know the amount of work involved. It took from conception and registering the website name to launch just over a year. So we launched with about 400 films and like I said, invitation only, but we got there. So if you just believe in it and you have a project where you work with the right kind of people, you can make it happen, even for somebody who's not a IT specialist like myself.
And how many months in total already since the beginning?
So we launched, the soft launch was in April of last year. And then in June, we had the formal launch. So formally, we've been available for a year and a quarter. So, but it's about coming up to about a year and a half since the platform went live. And touch wood, so far so good.
And what do you think, how in the future will change people's experience with cinema? Because now there is a lot of technologies with 3D are developed, with metaverse and all of the stuff. So in 20, 30 years time, how do you think, what kind of cinema will we have?
That's an excellent question. And what we found is, and I know this is my other job, is that the people who like films tend to like them in many, many different ways. So they like to watch them in the cinema, and they like to watch them at home, and they like to watch them on the laptop when they travel. So the idea is that people would stop going to the cinema just because they've been watching Netflix or Cultpix. Doesn't really ring true, because it is often the same kind of group of people that fall into those two camps, which makes perfect sense. If you're a beer connoisseur, you don't just sit with your home brewing kit and do it. You go out to microbreweries and visit other ones. Or if you like Italian food, you cook it at home yourself, and you go to a restaurant. As a cinema colleague from Canada said to me, Vincent Guzzo, he said, the kitchen is not the enemy of the restaurant, and streaming is not the enemy of cinema. So for something like Top Gun Maverick or Avatar 2, you must see it in the cinema on the biggest possible screen in the most immersive kind of way. Avatar 2 is probably going to be a great 3D experience. Top Gun Maverick was a great IMAX experience. I like to have, the best kind of picture and sound when I go to the cinema. And even for old films. And what's interesting that happened recently is that a cinema company that owns not a single screen, that only shows old films and has about one performance a day, was sold for $100 million. So we hear about problems with Cineworld, and yet a company called Secret Cinema based in the UK just became sold for $100 million, because they create these elaborate, immersive cinema environments where you feel like you're walking into the film. So they have a huge set with actors when they show a film like Back to the Future or Dirty Dancing or The Empire Strikes Back. So you actually get to live in the film for 2 hours and go to the bar and interact with characters, and then you sit and watch the film. So it's not cheap, but that's because they do an incredible way of staging it and immersing you in this. So what cinema needs to do is, even if it can't be that, it needs to be a good environment to immerse you in watching this film. So you want to have great picture, you want to have comfortable seats, you want to have the best possible sound. And as long as cinema does that, people are still going to be going out and watching films together.
What is your favorite film?
My favorite film is probably Stanley Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove, which these days is worryingly topical again with, all the discussions about nuclear war. But it is a great black comedy, and I hope and I pray that it never comes true, that it just stays a piece of fiction.
And what trends in video on demand market industry do you detect?
So the biggest trend and the thing that we're evaluating right now is the move towards what's known as FAST, free advertising supported television.
Yeah.
So it was a big topic at this year's IBC conference. Obviously, people have heard that Netflix is going to launch a advertising tier for its service. The same with Disney. We've seen great success for video platforms such as Pluto. And it's not really surprising because effectively we're reverting to what television used to be when we had multi-channel cable television, and there was always an advertising supported tier. And there was a premium tier like HBO where you didn't have to watch any adverts and you paid a bit of extra. So it's actually TV going back to being more normal, should we say, or the way that it used to be. So we've kind of gone through an exceptional period where companies like the usual ones had exceptional amount of money. They were, getting into so much debt, and Wall Street was throwing money on them as long as they were acquiring subscribers. Now they realize that they have to be able to make things pay. So they're cutting back on the budgets and the marketing and so on. And they're becoming a little bit more like what we've been used to in up until fairly recently, actually. So everything goes in circles.
Are you going to use any kind of advertisement on your website?
We've explored it. We're not ruling it out, but for now, we're quite happy to just be a subscription video on demand service. And our members seem to like it that way. So ask me again in a year or two, maybe we'll have a tier, but for now, we're staying pure SVOD.
And personally, what option do you prefer, to have advertisement or to pay for subscription?
I don't mind sitting through the adverts in the cinema at the beginning. Here in the UK, they do some pretty good adverts that look good on the big screen. Would I want my film interrupted for them every 20 minutes? No, I'm irritated enough when YouTube interrupts whatever I'm watching every 5 minutes with an advert. So personally, if I can, I'd pay a bit extra and just enjoy the whole film as it was meant to be in one uninterrupted take.
Is there something important that we didn't discuss?
I think
it should be mentioned.
I think your questions have been pretty spot on and very, very comprehensive and detailed. The only thing, what I'd add, and this is what I've been going on about, is there are always going to be new tools and new technologies coming up, especially for promotion and engagement.
Yeah.
And there is definitely a field for things such as NFTs and Web3s and XR and all of that. But the thing to remember, first of all, is two things. There is the films or the content, and then there is the audience. And how do you connect the two? Because the job of the distributor isn't the logistics of getting the film to the audience. It's creating demand for the audience to come to the film. And there are many, many ways of doing that. Some of them, most simple ones, are often overlooked. Like I said, our email newsletter has an open rate of between 35 and 45%, which is pretty staggering considering it's a promotional tool. So yes, try out everything, test everything, work with smart people who understand this. Keep a healthy dose of skepticism about anybody trying to sell you anything new, and then see what works, what's most appropriate for your type of content and your type of audience. And it won't be just one thing, it'll be many things. So, and you will fail before you succeed and find out what works, and what works changes over time. So just keep an open mind.
And what is the origin of your very interesting name? I suppose it has a great history.
Yes, it was a Polish great-great-grandfather. He used to have a big estate out in the country, which he lost. So the only thing I inherited was an unpronounceable surname. So
and in which
thanks,
area?
Grandpa.
In which area of Poland?
It was in the north of Poland, so it was in Kashubia, the area that Germany and Poland kept fighting over all the time. So it changed hands several times. Hence the von and the Sychowski. Bit of German, bit of Polish.
Thank you so much, Patrick. It was very interesting, and I wish a lot of success to your TV platform, Cultpix.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been great speaking to you. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.